Good day, everyone. Welcome to Speak Your Mind. Your mental health depends on it. I'm Cecilia Salazar, and thank you so much for joining us this week.
Dean Bissoondial here, and we truly appreciate that you're connecting with us today. We have planned for you a very fiery topic for discussion, and we can't wait to get into it with you.
Oh, guys, Vaughnette Bigford here. Welcome to those connecting with us online, plus our viewers on television. We are looking forward to your feedback on today's show.
So, Speak Your Mind was created so we can have some weekly discussions on mental health issues to start removing the stigmas associated with it and help you find some valuable solutions and develop better mental health practices.
In today's show, we're exploring your family dynamics, and we will take a look at conflicts that break families apart.
You know the old saying that you could choose your friends, but you can't choose your family. And most of the time, cracks in the relationships over the years and old wounds open up at critical times in your family's life when it might not be easy to be calm, rational, and thoughtful.
Yes, conflicts that break families apart come at times when we are hurting most, and only a strong family bond of love and caring for each other will see you through to the other side.
Yes. And today, we're extremely grateful to have with us Ms Sharon Bermudez, who is a marital and family therapist.
Well, great. Let's connect with our guest and start the conversation.
Okay, so welcome, Sharon Bermudez. We want to thank you for taking the time to share your experiences with us. Can you please do a short introduction of yourself and what you do?
Thank you very much. I'm so very pleased to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I'm a marital and family therapist. I am a pastoral counselor with a company, Looking Point Solutions Limited. And we offer counseling and training and intervention services as well as employee assistance services to organizations.
Well, to those of you who have joined us online, please share our show on your timelines because we need more people involved in the conversation, and we look forward to your comments and questions for Ms. Bermudez today.
Conflict and anger are natural parts of family life, but how you handle them makes all the difference in having relationships with loved ones. What are some of the issues you see many families dealing with, Sharon?
Well, there are so many. The list could be very long because once you're talking about conflict, you're really talking about a difference of opinion. Two parties or more parties who disagree with regard to what needs to be done or an outcome. And so that means that really anything can be a conflict. But I think my standout in terms of what I see most is infidelity and its impact within a couple, and then its impact within the wider family unit, because normally you would find that there's this problem of children having to take sides, or they feel like if they have to take sides, and it raises real problems with split loyalties. So just in terms of frequency, I think that's the one that I see most.
In Trinidad, especially. Well, in our research, when we were looking up, family conflicts, we saw that some of the top conflicts families face are money, family business, in-law related conflicts.
Oh, Lord.
Yes, battles over family events. Oh gosh, yes, the wedding, the whatever. Oh my gosh. Care of the elderly parents, step-parents, step-child conflicts, divorced parents, and conflicts over care and discipline of children. Now, I just listed a whole set there for you, Sharon. So what are some of your experiences with some of these?
Well, that is a long list, and it really kind of breaks down to what happens in relationships over a period of time. When relationships begin to break down under the pressures, whether it is the pressure of the couplehood or the pressure of the workplace or the wider family. So you talk, for example, about in-law relationships, and that is real. That is very, very real. I think that most of the times when I see it being a really big problem is when the couple move into the home of one of them, husband or wife, and there's usually some sort of issue with regard to how to create distinct boundaries around that family, and the in-laws maybe being a little bit too intrusive in what is taking place, and the other party feeling like if their spouse is taking the side of their parents,
Yes,
because
and not
usually
their
they kind
side,
of want to
right?
be like, I don't want to get involved in this, so they are kind of like in the middle. If it is the wife living by the husband's family, the wife might be talking about everything that is happening, hoping that he will intervene. He don't want to be in hot water with his family, and so they're kind of getting into that dynamic where she feels he isn't really supporting me the way that he should, and the parents feel like if he should be taking care of his wife more, and there's a whole lot of drama that happens with that. So each one of those areas are very real struggles that people have in trying to figure out how to relate well with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
And
guess
in
it's-
Trinidad, we have a lot of those where a lot of families end up living together,
Yes.
extended family situations. So that must be a
Correct.
real issue.
Well, I must say, with my experience with that, I'm not married, but I have instances where siblings live with my parents, and fortunately for them, like for my sibling spouses, and I'm sure they would attest to this too. Um, it it helps having mature-minded and responsible parents, because I can safely say they never really experienced that sort of tug and war between my parents and their spouses. You know.
well, thank God for that,
Yeah,
Dean.
boy, lucky.
You're lucky. I remember because, and I guess maybe, and this is my personal experience too. I tell people that even before we were married, we had the option of either staying by my home or going by my husband's. We had that option, but that was never an option for me because I know me. And I don't particular, and it comes with knowing who you are too. I know that I
Yes.
can't exist in somebody else's space and be that person to say that is not me. So I knew
Yes.
that from the beginning that was not an option for us because I know myself, so a lot of it is really knowing what you can or cannot accept or take.
Yes.
And if you're difficult too, because I think
And that's where the maturity comes in.
exactly.
It's a financial reality that unfortunately some couples
True.
have to face
True.
Yes.
because they don't see themselves as having any other options.
True.
But part of family counseling, you kind of have to put yourself into the place of all the parties. And to be fair, you could understand how for the parents sometimes it could be hard when
Yeah.
you're seeing things that you don't like. That's not the way you know how it's done, and you're thinking, well, your son or daughter not being treated well, you want to protect them. You tend to try to protect, not realizing, look, when you are interacting with a new couple, they have to rebuild boundaries. They have to redraw boundaries around them. It wouldn't be the same.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that process tends to involve a lot of conflict as well.
Yeah.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
One of the things I've noticed is that a lot of couples usually air their grievances in front of their children. And I always wonder about the impact that constant fighting in a home has on children. Here's a short video that explains it. Let's take a look.
When parents get on well together, their children do better. But we know it can be hard for couples to keep their relationships happy and healthy. Around 1 in 5 married or cohabiting couples are in relationships classified as distressed. That means they argue a lot, regularly consider separating, or regret being in their relationship. Conflict between parents can be easily triggered, often by common things that upset normal daily life. This can be problems with money or at work, or because of ill health. And around half of all couples say their relationships become strained after the arrival of a new baby. But it can be easy to forget that when relationships are strained, it is children who suffer the most. Children exposed to frequent conflict are at greater risk of depression and anxiety, and are more prone to problems with their physical health. They're also more likely to develop behaviour problems and to do worse at school. And this can have a knock-on effect later in life on an adult's relationships, employment, and their psychological well-being. And that's quite apart from the cost to society. Family breakdown has been estimated to account for £47 billion worth of public spending every year. But this is a problem we have the means to address.
What are some of the more devastating situations you've come across with family conflict, Sharon? Like, let's say we know that we have several things happening, but what are some of the more that scale that's devastating? What are some of those?
Well, I guess that we are purely into the area of the impact of abuse, the impact of drug abuse, and the impact of mental health. Or I should say mental illness on a family. And I think why it's so devastating is that it's just so difficult to deal with. So if we take, for example, mental illness, one family member having a mental illness. Now, mental illnesses range from normal to abnormal. And right now I'm speaking more about the more abnormal types of mental illnesses that are very hard to manage, and the person tends to be non-compliant. It's very frustrating for the family member to know what to do, how to get help for their loved one, because if somebody refuses the help, it's very difficult to impose it upon them. There are ways to do it, but it takes a lot. There's a high bar that needs to be reached, and what you end up what ends up happening is that the family members get very frustrated, and they get very tired, and they themselves are in a situation they are very scared, because sometimes the behavior is not just abnormal, it's aggressive, it's dangerous, and they don't know what to do to be able to secure their safety.
Wow, boy.
Go ahead, Sal.
No, well, one of the major problems is that children growing up in conflict, in these abusive situations, or with, in these devastating situations that you talk about, they one day become adults too. So what is the impact of all of this conflict on them? Who do they grow up to be? Here are 5 types of behaviors or personalities that can develop out of toxic families.
When parents get on well,
these are 5 types of children from toxic families. 1. The hero or responsible child. The hero or responsible child is wise and mature beyond their years. They're self-sufficient, perfectionist, overachieving, and seemingly composed. In reality, though, they suffer silently and carry the burden of sadness from their parents' toxic behavior. They're afraid of becoming like their parents, so they learn to be the exact opposite. For example, if the hero has a narcissistic and abusive parent, they usually try to be the favorite child, relying on good performance in order to receive love. 2. The scapegoat or troublemaker. The scapegoat or troublemaker is angry and defensive. At school, the scapegoat is typically the leader within their social group, and often get in trouble because that's how they learn to get the most attention. But because they've built walls around themselves out of fear, their relationship with others may be superficial. Toxic parents are usually extremely ashamed of them, as they try to convey their situation by acting out family problems that are usually ignored at home. But beneath that hard exterior, they're very emotionally sensitive. They're either the loud, rebellious type, or the one easily picked on. And since they've been hurt by their abusive parent, they can be self-destructive. 3. The lost child or dreamer. The lost child or dreamer is invisible within their family and tries to cope with the family's struggles by disappearing and reading books, daydreaming, or watching movies. They rarely get in trouble because everyone sees them as a good kid. It's assumed they also have a good, healthy life at home. The lost child is typically very shy and enjoys having a lot of space and solitude, causing others to view them as loners. Since they're more withdrawn, they struggle to develop important social skills and relationships with others, and often suffer from low self-esteem. 4. The mascot or class clown. The mascot or class clown is usually known as the cute one. They're always ready to lighten the mood with jokes or entertaining shows. Their dysfunctional family makes them feel powerless, so they try to cope by breaking the anger, tension, and conflict with fun and humor. Most mascot children have a friendly disposition and are described as overly nice. Mascot children enjoy helping others because it distracts them from their own problems. Beneath their cheerful demeanor, however, they usually suffer from low self-esteem, anxiety, and depression, developing workaholic tendencies to make up for their insecurities. They also find it painful to ask for help when they're hurt, so they put on a brave smile for the world. 5. The enabler or caretaker. The enabler or caretaker is typically married to an addict, but children can also take on this role. They listen to and console the addict while encouraging other families not to react negatively. Because the enabler doesn't know how to cope with toxic behavior, they make excuses for the addict's alcohol or drug problems and deny such problems exist, masking the family's downfalls to make sure the public sees them as a happy, well-rounded family.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that explains so much.
Are you all able to identify which category? Are you able to identify, Sal and Dean, which category you fall in? Is that? I was checking it out from that. I mean, I could see myself as number 1, but I could also see myself as number 4. I'm thinking of my teenage years and some of the things that I would have done at school and the ways that I would have behaved, and it was simply because of insecurity and you know, and when you actually see these things categorize you, it's
quite interesting because I think, or I believe, I know that I grew up in a very stable, well-rounded family, mother, father. I'm very blessed. Not saying they didn't have arguments and stuff, but even so, you can see this behavior in some of family members, like as the enabler caretaker. When one family member drinks too much, and it's like, no, they don't have a problem, and you're trying to say yes, but no, they don't want to deal with it at all. So they end up enabling the person and pretending that these problems don't exist. I see that a lot. I find that covering up of problems is a big issue in Trinidad. And of course, the class clown. As a teacher too, I've been in school and I could pick out the children when I do drama class. I could pick out the children as I'm watching this. I'm like, wow, I see those children. And I tell the mother, I said, that child has a lot of anger. That child, the class clown, there's something going on there.
Yeah.
And when you delve into it, it's because of some things happening at home.
Yeah, and that's the thing too that I find, like a lot of the conversations that we're having, a lot of teachers need to be exposed to that too, because as a teacher you have to be able to decipher that too.
Yeah,
you have to be able to know that this child is not particularly just deciding to be a troublemaker or deciding to be distracting others. It's not a conscious decision. There are a number of things going on.
Background,
exactly. There are a number of things going on in that situation. And sometimes, Dean, I remember an encounter that I had with some teens. Sometimes the only thing required in a situation is to just ask a question. Are you okay?
Yes.
You know, is something going on? And I remember doing that in a situation, and it ended up being a whole flood of tears and lots of stuff that I would not have even imagined was happening. So sometimes it's just to have the sensitivity and to just ask a question, you know.
Yeah. Well,
I think
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Did that asking that question and engaging that that individual, did that help resolve?
I think it helped resolve it to some extent. I mean, I mean, I live in Library and we're dealing with teens with a lot of social issues and stuff like that. But I think, I mean, I was able to involve the parent at involve the parent, but the child told me to involve the parent, and we kind of got it to some level of normalcy. But you know, it just came out of asking a question, are you okay? Because other than that, I might have totally missed it, you know?
That's amazing. Sharon, what was your take on this whole notion of toxic families?
Well, I'm not a great fan of labeling, but I must admit I have encountered my fair share of what I would consider to be toxicity. Now, why I said I'm not a great fan of labeling is that the reality of it is that all of us struggle. All of us are broken in different ways, and we show that brokenness in ways that are not desirable. I mean, if a camera was only 24 hours a day, it would not be pretty. Let's put it that way. So that I'm very wary about imposing that label of a toxic family.
Yeah.
But I mean, I am willing to concede that people show toxic behavior.
Right.
And when I think of toxicity, I'm thinking something that is harmful, something that is harmful to either it's harmful to yourself. So it's possible for it to be toxic if that first category of child that Vaughnette spoke about, which we call a parentified child, that could be harmful for that child. To the world, that child is wonderful. That child cooks, that child cleans, that child is doing good at school, that child takes care of their siblings. That child seems to be highly accomplished, but they are doing the work of a parent at an age when they are supposed to be a child. And that comes at a cost to that person. As well, it could be to the cost of everybody around you. And so that's the nature of it, so that parents do the best that they can do. They, within the resources that they have, and at times they do make mistakes, and it comes out in how children behave. But at the same time, they need to recognize that what is going on, even if you think you're hiding it, they probably are aware of what is taking place. They are internalizing it, and it is going to come out in some sort of behavior somewhere later on.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the point. I think it was Dean raised the point about parents having arguments or in front
of children. Yes. Yeah, we didn't deal with that.
I tell people my grandmother died when I was 25. I was raised by grandparents. And in my 25 years of existence with those two people, I had never, ever, ever heard them argue. Never. And I'm sure, and I mean, I asked my grandfather after it, I asked, so what is it that you're of one accord? And I couldn't understand it, that I had never heard them argue. And it was simply, as he said, a conscious decision that they made as parents to not have the children hear that. He said they used to have it out, but they had it out with respect, and they had it out in the privacy of that. We had never, ever heard. I never hear my grandparents argue. I wish I could have taken 1% of that from them. I never heard it. But it was just, as he said, a conscious decision that they made to not allow their children to be privy to that. You know, and that for me was amazing.
And I do think that, I mean, again, to be fair to the parents, it's very hard to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, when you work and you're tired, and, you know, of course, there are going to be disagreements, and of course, somebody's going to say something that hurts your feelings. And at that point in time, you really don't care who is hearing you. You know, you just want to get your point across. That's how most of us are. So that your grandparents were a bit of a rarity in that sense, but it is a good principle to live by. I sat with people who talk about their trauma, and I try to kind of roll it back, you know, tell me a little bit more, as you know, as far back as you can give that talk about it. And I could have somebody telling me about something that they heard when they were 6, when they were 5, when they were 7. And you may think, well, they would never remember that. And they do. And they are able to give it with a fair amount of detail. So it is something that does have an impact on mental health. It is something that, depending on how it manifests itself, it can be very traumatic. I don't want to give the impression that, oh gosh, you need to make sure that they never hear you argue. Right?
Yeah.
Because it could be a good role model. If I could see you argue and I could see you make up, And I
Yes.
could see that arguing happens within a particular range, and it doesn't get violent. It
Right.
doesn't verbally put down. It doesn't make you into a bad person. And I could see that we could kiss and make up. That's a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would definitely say never.
Yeah.
That
When it comes
That's what I was
to-
going to say.
me
I was
too.
going to say that arguing must happen. It's I don't know.
It's
As
part
I
of
say,
life.
yeah,
It's
part of life. Vaughnette's grandparents were special,
No, but as I said, they did argue. They
but
did.
private,
They
right?
just did it in the privacy of them.
But when you have a good, loving
But-
family, and you can see
Yes.
that arguing happens, but as well, on a Sunday, we go to the beach together, we go on a picnic together, and we laugh and play together as well. You know,
It's the-
it could balance off each
the
other.
resolution to the argument is what really
Absolutely.
counts,
Yeah.
because most of the times we put a negative spin on conflict, but there's a lot of good that comes out of it when you see how your parents resolve an argument or some sort of conflict. You learn from that experience.
True.
Absolutely. You learn how to do relationship.
Yeah.
We learn a lot about what we do in relationship from watching what our parents do.
Yes.
And realistically speaking, you know, our children are not going to go through a conflictless life.
Yes.
You know, they're going to get some conflict at work, definitely. You know, whether it's with the supervisor or with their co-workers, or they are the supervisor and it's their downline. They're going to get some conflict in church. They're going to get some conflict with friends.
Yeah.
It is important to equip a child with what is needed in order for them to live their life as an adult. And part of that is learning about conflict, and that conflict is normal. Conflict can be positive. Conflict can lead to a superior outcome rather than something that is intrinsically bad. And the issue is not that there is conflict. Issue is how do you manage the conflict. And I think when we're talking about the forces that kind of split the family apart, we're talking about people who manage the conflict negatively, right? They're doing things that will end up hurting self and hurting somebody else. But there are other people who go through big conflicts, but they manage it in such a way that it leads to a better outcome.
Yeah.
And if I can show my child that we can fight, but fighting don't mean the end of the relationship. And we could kiss and we could make up and we could have a nice long relationship even though we fight. Well, yeah,
Right.
the argument is so bad.
I love it. Any comments? Do we have any comments?
Yes, let's take a
Welcome
look.
to those who are joining us online. Do we have any comments? Hi,
Sure.
Pamela.
Nicholas Maxwell says respect is a great starting point for parents. Learning how to have a conversation intensely is a skill. Pamela says, yes, good point, seeing the makeup part being resolved in a peaceful way. Ricardo asks, would you say that most bad behavior, like outbursts by children, is a result of stress or some kind of trauma in the home? And he also says conflict in itself is not necessarily a bad thing. How you handle and resolve it can lead to better outcomes.
Oh, like we need Ricardo on the panel.
He's absolutely right. Would I say that outbursts are a result of stress? What I would say is outbursts is a form of behavior. So it is the person's kind of learned response with regard to how to manage the situation that they are in. So yes, stress could trigger it off, or trauma could trigger it off, or many different things could trigger it off. But it is somebody who has not probably learned as yet how to engage in some distress alleviation and be able to communicate themselves in the way that will lead to positive resolution. I don't see it. I see it as something that falls out of a number of different things, but all pointing to the fact that the person hasn't figured out how to be able to communicate what they want to say in a way that is assertive and that will grab the other person.
Okay.
Thanks for the comments, guys. Keep them coming. Let's move on to find some ways in which we could deal with conflict. Let's deal with it.
Right. So, Sharon, your job is to help people deal with conflict, right? What are some of the most useful things people can do when they want to resolve conflicts at home?
Well, my process really always will start from self. Before we could get into dealing with it, we have to engage in some form of self-management because, as I said, the conflict itself isn't bad, it's normal. The fact that somebody is angry is in itself is not bad. But before I could go and search for a solution, I kind of have to positively ventilate it. I have to understand why it is I am upset. And most of the times people are angry is because a boundary is violated. So I need to understand what is my position with regard to this conflict. Why when this person said this, I felt to tap him up outside the head. Why it is that I just felt like pulling out my hair. Why it is I just wanted to scream at him before I can get into some sort of a conversation. So I think that combination of taking a space to allow myself to calm down, to allow myself to self-manage and to deal with my own feelings about the situation, to figure out what this is to me, what's my issue, what do I want to have happen out of it. That has got to be a starting off space before I get into the other aspect, which is the conversation that I am having with that person.
That is very good.
So some level of introspection is needed as far as first steps to take to conflict.
Absolutely. And that's difficult, eh? That's difficult, eh?
It is very difficult. But even before introspection, because when you're vexed, you're just damn vexed. Let's just face it, call it as it is. Right? So introspection, no. I don't want to think about anything. I know you are the one who is wrong, okay?
Right.
I absolutely know that I'm completely right and you're a real idiot.
And you just want to get it off your chest.
Yes. But do you know how many people tell me that they just don't care at that moment? They just want to let it all hang out. They don't care. They don't want to get cancer because of holding it in. So let me just say everything I have to say. And then afterwards, I will deal with it. But unfortunately, that is just not the best way to manage it because the other person disconnects.
Yeah.
Once it is that I am coming at you in this really aggressive way and just kind of throwing nails and saying, this is why you are not only wrong, you are a bad person. Because even if you don't say that, sometimes that's the underlying message that is there. You are not only wrong or just a bad person. I stop listening to what you have to say. So before we could get to introspect, we have to get to self-care. Before we get to introspect, we have to get to venting out. But venting out in a positive way. We don't want to batter the person. We want to find a way of kind of constructively getting it out. So maybe that's like exercise. Or like if I had a beautiful voice like Vaughnette, I might go singing. I don't. I won't. But
when I vex, you don't want to hear what I singing in the shower.
You don't want to hear what I singing. When the word don't matter, not really.
I bust the windows of your car.
As long as you do not do it, that's good. You see what's going on with my singing voice? When we are angry, we think about all sorts of things. It is not the most flattering part of us. And sometimes we're like, oh my God, I can't believe I thought that. Something must be wrong with me. I must be a bad person.
Yeah.
But I tell people all the time, our mind is a big computer processing lots of stuff really fast. And sometimes the stuff that we process really isn't that nice. And as long as we don't stay with it and encourage it, that's okay. It is what it is. I feel how I feel. I know I'm upset. I need to work through that feeling. I need to work through that upset. and to get myself to the place where I can have a conversation where the other person would want to listen to me. And that's all the point of it. Let's just get to that point. And hopefully the other person is doing that. Because when you are looking at the resolution, it should not be where one person is being metaphorically battered. And the other person is just getting the relief. I'm feeling better now. No, both parties are supposed to be coming together for a peaceful resolution.
Good.
Dealing with conflict in a constructive way. We found this next video clip which outlines 3 things that you can do better to deal with conflict. Let's take a listen.
Number 1, don't get defensive. In any conflict, whether it's professional or personal, we all feel the urge to rush to our defense. You may find yourself constantly trying to correct the other person's position with but, nevertheless, however, in defense of your own position before they are even finished explaining their opinion. Try turning the situation around. How do you feel when another person is constantly contradicting you and seems unwilling to consider your opinion? Take a moment and really try to see things their way. They have reasons for their point of view, just as you do for yours. This doesn't mean that you have to accept their position, but if you let them know you are taking them seriously, you can avoid things getting personal. Try using phrases such as, "I understand what you mean," and "that's a valid point." Signal that you respect their opinion, even if you don't agree. Number 2, avoid the blame game. When you feel under attack and go on the offensive, even calling the other person's character or intelligence into question, you cannot really win. All you've done is made an enemy. Avoid blaming others. Instead, establish an atmosphere of respect, one in which everyone can safely express themselves. Let others state and explain their points of view without launching an attack. Number 3, listen actively. Perhaps the greatest way to resolve a conflict is by really listening. You want to express yourself, so let others express themselves. Instead of listening just to discover flaws and formulating counter-arguments while they are speaking, listen to what they have to say. You may discover that you didn't really understand the point the other person was actually making. You may discover common ground. In any case, they will respect you for listening.
Wow. Oh my gosh, don't get defensive.
The
That is the
first
first
one.
thing everybody does. Get defensive. Oh my gosh.
The first one, I see every time I see don't get defensive, I expected to see Vaughnette on that day. Don't get
I
defensive.
wouldn't say who I expected. I can't talk. Yes, we don't want to get into that here, personal. But people tend to get defensive. I think that's natural that you start to defend your point of view and take it personal. But that's one of the 4 laws of agreement that really I have had to work on my whole life. Don't take it personal.
How do you not take it personal, Sal? How are you doing that?
Well, because sometimes the problem is not with you. The problem is with them. They are angry because of something, they did or something they perceive. And it's not really me. So it's hard. It's really hard. It takes a lot of practice.
Yes, it's about putting yourself in that other person's position. It's something they teach you, like in customer service training, how to not take things personally, because frontline staff can come under a lot of fire from customers and that sort of thing. And one of the things they teach you on not taking things personally is to put yourself in that other person's shoe. Perhaps they're having a bad day, and empathize with them instead.
That is it.
Yeah, I think my biggest thing is that point about not seeing that conversation or that exchange as an attack on me or my personality or something that I'm doing. It's because that's where it goes first for me. It's like it feels like an attack on me. So to say, do not be defensive is active work for me, because I always see it as, okay, this person is actually you're coming at me, and I feel I need to defend myself with this, So that for me is all that.
Mhm.
I tell them, "Only my business."
Sharon listening to us and trying to analyze us all right now. Yeah?
Welcome to my couch.
Yeah. Yeah, but that thing about listening to and actively listening and listening with the not with the intent to respond, because you're just listening and just waiting for them to have to stop to jump
Yeah.
in, but actually actively listening, that is something that I really have been trying to work
Yeah.
on.
All of this requires a lot of maturity, right, Sharon?
It does.
It just requires a lot of work, a commitment to do the work of it. Nobody expects you to be perfect at it, but it's a decision that, you know what, I understand that if I don't go this way, chances are this situation is going to go south. This
Right.
is going to degenerate into an argument. And in the end of the day, what is my goal? Is my
Yeah.
goal to win? Or is it my goal to resolve
Resolve.
and to strengthen my family unit? Absolutely good point that you have to be prepared to listen, right? In terms of conflict resolution. After you kind of calm down and you know what you want to say, you also have to be prepared to listen to what the other person has to say, because at the end of the day, really your goal is to find a workable solution for both parties, for all parties. And that involves real active engagement and discussion and negotiation and all of those sort of lovely things. And then when we find a solution, we have to be willing to do something different. You know, you can't say, oh, okay, I want to fix my
Point.
family relationships. And it's the same old, same old. We
Yes.
talk, and then afterwards we go back and we're doing the same thing again. You know, somebody going to get frustrated about that, and that's not going to have a good outcome.
Yeah.
That is
I guess
so
yeah,
true.
there's a major point there, that the both parties have to be willing to find a solution, or the both parties have to want to end whatever that conflict is as against one person.
And then some people say, well, I can't change. That annoys me. Everybody can change. If you want to
right.
change, I believe if you want to solve it, you can change. But, that is a point that people say, well, I can't change. Or your parents, they're old and they can't change. So
Mhm.
the
You're
balance.
absolutely right. We have almost complete control over our behavior. We have no control over our feelings. We have some control over our thoughts. So a decision to change is something that I could make. I could say, I realize how much this is hurting my partner or my children or my parents, whoever the other party is. I don't want this type of relationship. I choose something different.
Yes. Positive. Dean, do we have any more questions and comments from our audience at this point?
Certainly. Let's take a look. Yvette Marchand says, "Good evening. Conflict resolution is an important part of our lives."
Hey, Eva.
She goes on to say, "Set goals." Nicholas Maxwell, "We need to learn to switch from a general attitude of punishment, fear, and control to patience and reaching."
Absolutely.
Ricardo says, "Teachers have the task of managing different behaviors in a classroom. There should be sessions and training resources for them to handle and help children that display these disruptive behaviors."
True.
He goes on to say, for example, emotional intelligence. I agree with that.
Yeah.
And Nicholas Maxwell says, again, great stuff, folks.
Thank you, Nicholas.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all your comments. That was so great. Let's go on to our next segment now. Finding help.
So, what are some of the places that families can go to get help with conflict? What are some of the places?
Well, in the world of counseling, you can access it through so many different ways, depending on what is your means and what is your access. So, for example, the Ministry of Gender Affairs and Social Development has a program, National Family Services. And National Family Services provides free counseling to citizens of Trinidad and Tobago throughout Trinidad and Tobago. But many people may not be aware of their services. So that if it is that somebody doesn't have the kind of money to go out and pay for counseling, but they know they have counseling services, they can pick up the phone and call National Family Services and ask them about where they can access counseling services. And then there are other NGOs. Of course, you have Lifeline, who provides a specific type of support, but it is there. And there are other NGOs that provide some level of support as well. So those are out there. And the Catholic Church actually has a peer counseling program, which is not quite the same thing as professional counseling. These the average person who is trained in listening skills and basic counseling support, again, is offered for free. So that is another resource. And then, of course, we have the range of professional counselors, and there are a lot of different. People get real confused because we decided to confuse everything, even though everybody call themselves a counselor and therapist. Then you get into, well, I'm a marital and family therapist, and the next person is a psychologist, and the next person, one is a clinical psychologist, next one is a counseling psychologist, next one is an industrial psychologist, and all sorts of different labels that kind of confuse people a lot. But basically, all it means is people who are trained to counsel as they're living. And for some of us, we have our own companies and our own shingles that we have set up. And, you could just look for the resources out there and let your fingers do the walking, figure out the price and everything, where you want to go, and access counseling services. At this point, because of COVID, many people are online, telephone, and there are few people who are in person as well. And then, of course, you have EAPs, which are employee assistance programs. And in that case, it's a company that is covering for services to its employees. So not everybody has access to an EAP, but if your organization does have an EAP, it's a good way for you to access professional counseling at no additional cost to you.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question, Sharon? Mm-hmm. Are counselors trained to tell people if it's not going to work out?
To run.
That's an interesting question.
Or is it that the intent is always for some resolution to maintain the status quo? Are you trained to say, hey, run from that?
Yeah, get out.
Well, I don't think that I would actually say run from that directly. But no, it's my job. I am a marital and family therapist, so I obviously believe in marriage. I'm a pastoral counselor, so I obviously, from a spiritual perspective, believe in marriage. So, but having said that, I don't think it's my job to say that till death do you part if you are in this very miserable, unhealthy relationship that is breaking you down and breaking down your children. I believe it's my job to help people to stay together in a healthy relationship. So where I have two parties who are willing to do the work of it and they want to stay together, and we are coming together to kind of sort through your issues and figure out how to do them differently so that it's a good relationship for both parties. I think that's my job. A counselor's job is not necessarily to advise. Say, Vaughnette, that fella, go in a different direction. No, it's not. There are times I'm tempted. There are times maybe I may be really close to the line, or maybe I'm standing on the line, but I hope that I don't really go over the line. Ultimately, the decision is the client's. But I think what it is my job to do is to be able to say that dynamic is unhealthy. What's going on there, I don't see a good outcome to. If I'm seeing you walking into a big hole that is deep, I don't think it's my job to kind of close my eyes and to just allow you to continue to walk. So really a counselor's job is a kind of dialogue, right? Helping the person to unpack the issues that are going on in their relationship. If their goal is reconciliation, to try to build up their capacity to be in that relationship, but in a functional way, and to enable that person to kind of figure out, do I want to remain in this relationship?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's answering your question.
Yes, of course.
Perfect.
I want to know too, in Trinidad, in the past, I believe that there's a lot of stigma against, going to therapy and counseling. Have you seen this change in Trinidad? Because I know they have counselors in schools now. But when I talk to the young people, they're like, nah, we're not going to talk to her. So I'm like, what is the point of having her there if, they have this
stigma,
aversion to it? Yeah.
Well, yes, I would absolutely say that there is a stigma, and there's still a stigma. So I came back to Trinidad in 1998 after my studies, and certainly there was a lot of pushback at the idea of counseling. And I was working at an EAP, so an employee assistance program within a company, and you'd have to go out and do these training programs and education programs, etc. And it's like if the devil manifests in front of people. That's how they behave. So it's like I think I have 20 million stripes down my back from the kind of comments that were fielded. But I have seen over the years that people are much more engaged, people are much more interested, people are much more relaxed, they have much more confidence, and much more people are coming in to use these services. It is a change. It is a changing dialogue, an ongoing dialogue that is getting better and better. And so I think, to your point with regard to the schools, I've certainly had teens in with me who have kind of made somewhat those comments, that they wouldn't go to the guidance counselor. And the fact is, the schools actually do have a fairly comprehensive level of support that is offered to students.
Yeah.
So there are still barriers that needs to be addressed so that people get the help that they would need. Because in the end of the day, nobody goes about saying that I break my hand, but I'm not going to the doctor.
Right.
Like, they understand when I broke my hand, I needed to go to the doctor to help it. Right. And I think my goal is to reach the point where we no longer have to have this conversation about people using mental health. People just feel free to use it because they realize that it's there, it works, it helps, and they need it at that moment in their life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sharon, what are some of the popular misconceptions that you see people having about therapy and counseling?
Confidentiality, number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 10. Which the counselor will breach it, and the business is going to be on the street, and everybody is going to be talking about them. Which is it's a big myth, because there are professional standards that are there, and there are damages that could be done if it is those standards are breached. So many people have a fear about it, but it is not really a big risk factor. Of course, there are times when we are actually called upon to give out information without somebody's permission, which is usually if there's a danger present to you or to somebody else, or there's a legal requirement like mandatory reporting. So I'm not meaning to say that everything that you say cannot be repeated, but unless those conditions are hit, we are not allowed. We would be in a lot of legal jeopardy if we went in that way.
Yeah.
And the other thing is just weakness. That if I go to counseling, that means that I'm a weak person and I could take care of my own business. What she could know? What she could tell me? What she know about me and what she know about? And we believe that. But I don't know about you specifically. I know a lot of stuff about psychological stuff and about relationship stuff. and I can bring that light to bear in relation to your relationship. And we can look at that, take that general thing and make it specific to your relationship. You are the expert on you, and you are the expert on your relationship. But by the time most people come into counseling, they feel stuck. So my little extra in terms of my training and my experience could sometimes help somebody to get unstuck and get them along the way. And ultimately, that's all a counselor aims to do, is just to empower their clients and free them to be able to live their life.
Yes. So while family relationships can bring support, joy, and other wonderful benefits into our lives, they can also bring stress, particularly when there's unresolved conflict. We have expectations of trust and closeness towards family members, and it can be more than merely disappointing to realize that this may not be possible with all family members.
Okay, so let's go on to hope. Let's see if we can wrap up hope quickly.
Yeah.
Well, guys, we know of one place you can turn to when you're feeling overwhelmed. And you can reach out to our friends at Lifeline. Let's take a look at this.
Well, Sharon, it was indeed a pleasure having you here today. It was enlightening. Thank you very much for your time and thoughts. Anything you'd like to say quickly before we wrap up today's show?
I would just like to big up Lifeline, who have been doing this really phenomenal job for such a long time. And there are so many people out there who need that listening ear for that 24 hours, sometime really early in the morning, when they're not going to find the friend, they're not necessarily going to find the counselor or anybody else. And Lifeline is there. I tested their system a couple of years ago before I went on a show. I called them really early. And you know what? I got an answer.
All right.
So maybe for somebody who really needs that voice, make that call.
Yes. I would like to thank those of you who joined us online today and took part in today's show. Guys, keep liking and sharing these videos. Join us next week, same time, same place. I'm Dean Bissoondial. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye, guys. Bye, guys. Stay safe.
I'm Cecilia Salazar. Bye. Let's be kind to each other.
Be kind to each other.